Council Tuesday, March 12th. We do have a quorum. I'd like to ask Adara Wilson and Luke Clifton if they would come up and lead us in the invocation and pledge, please.
Please bow your heads. Heavenly Father, we come to you today asking for your guidance, wisdom, and support as we begin this meeting. Please help us to engage in meaningful discussion, grow closer as a group, and nurture the bonds of community. Fill us with your grace, Lord, as we make decisions that might affect our community, and continue to remind us that all that we do here and all that we accomplish is for the pursuit of truth, for the greater glory of you, and for the service of humanity. We ask these things in your name. Amen.
Amen.
Ready, set, pledge. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good job. Adara and Luke are members of Pittsburgh County 4-H leadership team, and as county ambassadors, they both attend Parker Intermediate and McAlester Public Schools. So thank you, guys. Would you call the roll, please?
Councilman Smith.
Here.
Stevens.
Here.
Reed.
Here.
Brown.
Here.
Pritchard.
Here.
Mayor.
Here. We are up to recognition and awards. And the Employee of the Month for February is Delona Jones. Delona constantly goes above and beyond for events at the Expo and for the city. When asked, she is one of the first to help any department with any project. During the month of December, Delona was instrumental in helping keep the ice rink running and looking nice for the community. She was one of the driving forces behind making sure the rink was operational and took full charge of how the setup went. Delona still volunteered her time to help the non-uniformed council run concessions as well as clean and operate the rink while she was on her 2-week vacation leave during the month of December. The success of the ice rink could not have occurred without her efforts and dedication. Delona has been willing to take on new projects and events, even with time sensitivity, especially when they benefit the community and bring new opportunities for everyone. She is dedicated to helping other departments and raising money for the non-uniformed council program, which helps city employees in need. Her hard work and dedication are invaluable. We need more city employees who exhibit these same characteristics. For these reasons, I want to say thank you, Delona Jones, for deserving of this award. Come on. And if you ever go to the employee dinner, she forces you to participate in employee games. We have always.
Thank you.
Good job. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Jones. Thank you. Thanks for your work. No.
We will move to citizens' comments on non-agenda items. Residents may address the council regarding an item that is not listed on the agenda. Residents must provide their name and address. Council requests that comments be limited to 5 minutes. I didn't have anyone sign up, so unless anyone is here to do it that didn't sign up, we will move to the consent agenda. All matters listed under the consent agenda are considered to be routine by the city council and will be enacted by one motion. There will not be separate discussion of these items. If discussion is desired, that item will be removed from the consent agenda and will be considered separately. The agenda tonight consists of A, approval of minutes from February 12th, 2019, regular meeting of the McAlester City Council. B, approval of claims for January 21st, 2019 through March 5th, 2019. C, consider and act upon receipt of the permit number SL 0000611901009 from the Oklahoma Department of Environmental Quality for the construction of 1,461 linear feet of 8-inch PVC sanitary sewer line and all appurtenances to serve the 2018 CDBG sewer project. Would anyone like anything removed? Take a motion and a second to approve. Motion, Councilman Reed, second, Councilman Smith. Any discussion? Corge, call the roll, please.
Councilman Reed,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Stevens,
Yes.
Brown,
Yes.
Pritchard,
Yes.
Mayor.
Yes, and the motion carries. We're now on to a public hearing. All persons interested in any ordinance listed under scheduled business shall have an opportunity to be heard in accordance with Article 2, Section 212B of the City Charter. The ordinance tonight is an ordinance of the City of McAlester, Oklahoma, amending Chapter 22, Businesses of McAlester City Code, creating Article 8, Medical Marijuana, establishing regulations for commercial marijuana establishments, establishing license and permit requirements, providing for location, providing for conditions of operation, establishing permitted marijuana facilities to include medical marijuana dispensaries, commercial marijuana growing facilities, and commercial marijuana processing facilities, amending Chapter 48, fees, charges, and service rates, establishing necessity for fees and amounts, establishing necessity for permits, amounts, and process for permitted marijuana facilities, providing for repealer, codification, severability, and declaring an emergency. Take a motion in a second to open the public hearing. Motion, Councilman Smith, second, Councilman Reed. Any discussion? Corge, call the roll, please.
Councilman Smith,
Yes.
Reed,
Yes.
Stevens,
Yes.
Brown,
Yes.
Pritchard,
Yes.
Mayor.
Yes, so we're now in a public hearing. Anyone that would like to address the council concerning that ordinance? Seeing no one, I take a motion in a second to close. Motion, Councilman Smith, second, Councilman Reed. Any discussion? Corge, call the roll, please.
Councilman Smith,
Yes.
Reed,
Yes.
Brown,
Yes.
Pritchard,
Yes.
Stevens,
Yes.
Mayor.
Yes, and the motion carries. Agenda item number 1, I was contacted by Mr. Brawley prior to the meeting tonight. He asked to have it withdrawn. So we'll move to agenda item number 2, discussion and presentation of quarterly report for the Oklahoma Small Business Development Center.
Mayor, members of the council, this evening we have Dana Hugel from the Small Business Development Center representing what counties?
Representing Latimer, LaFleur, Haskell, and Pittsburgh County.
There you go. And then our new,
And Henry Lear, who is housed here in Pittsburgh County, so he's obviously representing Pittsburgh County. We covered the 4-county area, but as you are aware, the Oklahoma Small Business Development Center covers the entire state of Oklahoma, but we focus on these 4 counties, and Henry focuses here on Pittsburgh County. So you all have some information in your packet. I know you have a long agenda today, so I don't want to belabor and read all of these data points, but we do want to set some, basically we want to set out what you all would like to see on a quarterly basis. So this is, I wanted to give you a comparison of 2017 and 2018 totals so that you would have something to compare to as we move into 2019. You can see 2019 year to date. This was actually into February, so you have no March data in year to date. And then Pittsburgh County 2018, I wanted to kind of set some points for you all to start being able to look at by zip code so that you can see what kind of clients we're serving as far as by zip code. So you can see the number of clients that we served in 2018. I put that as a data point so that as we go through 2019, what we'll do moving forward is we'll start to have a comparison chart so that you can see 2018 compared to 2019, so you can watch that growth now that Henry is here, boots on the ground, so to speak. So on there's a slide that's titled Capital Formation 2019, and that is actually a typo. I apologize to you all. That's Capital Formation 2018. So I thought it would be important. And like I said, I'm not going to read every slide to you all. You all have had this packet for a while, and I know that you've had time to look through it. But I thought it would be important to look at capital formation so that you all know the number of loans that are being set out, owner investment into the community, other capital so that would be grants, that might be angel investors, things like that that's coming into the communities. So we can break those down by county. This is just total capital formation for 2018 for the 4-county area. But I wanted to just start kind of a baseline of where our comparisons are going to go for 2019. That way, if there's additional information that you all would like to see, you can let us know, and we can make those adjustments early on and start tracking that. You can see the types of businesses that we're working with, the types of age of businesses. So lots of startups. We've already started. Lots of startup activity in 2019. There have been some things shifting. So that's really exciting. Our areas of advising, you have that as well. And then I wanted you all to know a little bit about our areas of certification and our areas of background, so that information is included. The last time I was before you, we hadn't hired Henry yet, so I want to introduce you to Henry Lear. Henry has a background in real estate and general business advising. Our onboarding process is a 3-month process. So Henry actually started with us October 1st and onboarded for the first 3 months. So he is now a certified business generalist. So we all have to be able to work with any business in any industry. And then we hand off to area specialists across the state to co-advise, and we work together as a team. But he's also now working on his certification in innovation technology, which is going to be, we feel like, a great opportunity for us in this area because of defense, the defense industry, and needing to grow more support industries for defense in this area. So I'm working on my economic development business credit analysis certification. So I hopefully will complete that at the first week of April. So I will have that under my belt, as well as experience in healthcare, marketing, and agritourism. So I know I went through all of this really quickly, but you've had, like I said, you've had the data. Our next steps, just to kind of let you know where we are. So this is all the work that we've done prior really to Henry coming on board. So our next steps, we've taken the information, because historically OKSBDC has worked with clients in Pittsburgh County. I've worked with clients in Pittsburgh County, but we wanted to go back and review that list and see if we can reach back out to any clients that are looking to expand or grow their business in some way, and also to identify clients that have opportunity in technology innovation. So we've started going back through those growth opportunity clients. Then we're also working to help lenders understand more what we do, so that we can partner with our local lenders and help them kind of us help them help the clients, because a lot of times people go for lending and they're not actually prepared. They don't have 3 years of financial projections. They don't have good market data. So we're working with the lenders to help them understand what type of clients to refer to us. And then we're working with local groups. We spoke at Rotary recently. Henry's been attending the Chamber of Commerce luncheons, so that the local groups will know to be able to refer clients to us. So if there are questions that you all have for us, we'd be happy to entertain those. As you look over this data, if there are other data points that you would like to see in a quarterly report, if you would let us know, that would be helpful. But we felt like we needed to start kind of some base points for a trend line for Pittsburgh County.
Councilman Reed.
Didn't we fund y'all?
Yes.
How much was that?
So the funding amount, do you know what that is
About
exactly?
$39,000 a year.
Did you get funding from any other source?
So our funding, part of our funding comes from the SBA. So it's a dollar for dollar match with the SBA. And then it's part of a 4-county consortium. So you all are funding Henry's position. My position is funded by 10 other entities. So, and I can name all 10 if you want me to.
And the reason I ask that is because I remember that the way this was sold to us was that a majority of your potential clients or people that you're already servicing come from McAlester. But yet, during your presentation, all you talk about is Pittsburgh County. So what I want to see, since the city of McAlester has been apparently the only city that has helped fund this effort, I'd like to see how it's directly impacting McAlester.
Okay.
Not as a county as a whole.
Okay.
Because the county's not funding you, we are.
Okay. So on the number of clients by zip code, I'll break that down, and then I can go ahead and break down some of the financial information by zip code.
I
as
saw
well.
you have the zip code there broke down, but as far as new jobs created,
just I'll break down all of that
loans,
information
all
by
that
zip
stuff.
code
All
as well.
I care about is the impact
on
of what
McAlester.
we're getting in return for our money.
Okay.
Councilor Smith?
How do you measure your performance? Do you have goals for this coming year?
Oh,
in these
absolutely.
areas that-
Absolutely.
It'd be interesting to see those
Okay.
and to see how you performed at the year end.
Okay. Yeah, I can share that with you. And if you'd like, I can go ahead and put that in an email and get that information out to you. Is that okay before the
Why don't
next?
you send it off to me and then I'll
And they'll get it
distribute
out.
it to
Okay.
the council?
Completely not related to the money aspect of it, but when you're talking small business, what size business?
So it depends on the industry, but for most small businesses, for most industries, 500 employees or less. So in our area, that's almost everyone. And then there are some specific defense industries and manufacturing industries that it depends on their gross sales for the year. We don't have anyone that is over that limit at this point in our area.
Find us 500 employee small business, we'll be pretty darn happy.
Exactly. Exactly.
They'll pretty much help anybody.
Yes.
Yeah. Any other questions or comments? Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
For your
Appreciate
time.
We are on to agenda.
Henry needs to speak more in the future.
Yeah. Be careful what you wish for. Maybe I'll go ahead, guys. Agenda item number 3, consider and act upon authorizing the purchase of one new and unused SFB 120 filter system for Jeff Lee Pool. Mr.
Mayor?
Pretty.
Council, staff is recommending the purchase of a new filter tank for Jeff Lee Pool, an amount of $34,523.86. Had 2 bids, and Recreonics Incorporated was the low bidder, and I think it's a good bid, and it's needed. Our old tank's 19 years old and developing some leaks.
I put it in 19 years ago.
Yeah, that's probably right.
I did. Any questions or comments?
Mel, how's your other pools functioning? Are they doing okay?
Yes, sir.
Anybody else? Any questions, comments? Take a motion in a second to approve.
I'll
Motion
make
Councilman Smith and second Councilman Brown. Any further discussion? Corey, would you call the roll, please?
Councilman Smith,
Yes.
Brown,
Yes.
Pritchard,
Yes.
Stevens,
Yes.
Reed,
Yes.
Mayor.
Yes, and motion carries. We're on to agenda item number 4, consider and act upon authorizing the mayor to sign the attached outlay report and request for reimbursement for construction programs for project AIP 3-40-0057-016-2018 and OAC grant partial payment request for grant MLC-19-FS for rehabilitation of runway 220 and connecting taxiways. Mr. Hornick and Mr. McDonald.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Mayor, Councilman. First off, before I start into my request, I'd like to introduce Tyler McDonald. He's with LBR. They've been the ramrods on the design and construction portion of our airport runway out there. I'll lead in, make my request, and he'll give a brief on whatever questions you want to ask, plus the construction at the airport. So, I'm your Public Works Director, and I'm asking you to consider and approve pay request number 3 and 4 for the runway and taxiway rehabilitation at our airport. Construction started on 220, the connecting taxiways at the McAlester Airport back in October 28th, 2018, and it's progressed at a steady rate. We've now hit an 88% completion level, so we're not far. We're down to finishing it. The FAA grant will provide 90% of the funding for this project. The Oklahoma Aeronautical Commission and the city will each provide 5%. Cost for construction and inspections, this billing comes to $3,178,466 and a nickel, of which the city's portion is $158,922.75. Runway and taxiway rehab is progressing toward final inspection. Once the remaining construction work and cleanup is complete, a final inspection will be scheduled. The final payment for the project will be made when the FAA gives final buy-off on the project. And at this point, I'll turn it over to Mr. McDonald.
Thought I'd give you a little update on how construction is going. As David said, we're 88% complete, and that's financially. Actually, the work is closer to done than that. They've used about 60% of their days, so they've done an extraordinary job of getting it done quickly and efficiently. And you can tell by these 2 pay requests in the past, this is about a month and a half worth of work and a lot of money being asked for, requested. So they've gotten a lot done in a short amount of time. They've done very quality work. All the tests are passing. We're very happy with the product we're getting. At this point, we can kind of see the big financial picture for the rest of the project. We did have a couple little overages, but they're going to be small, especially for a project of this size. We had some areas where there's saturated clay that we had to over excavate and deal with that. So we had to bring in some more borrow. So there was dirt quantities that went up. There was a little bit of lighting work that we got into a lighting wire that wasn't buried as deep as it should have been 20, 30 years ago. So we got into that. Just some items that we had to deal with. There really was no choice of what to do. We just couldn't foresee it before the project. We foresee being about a 5% overage. The good thing about this is the FAA participates in all the overages. They pay their 90% portion of everything. At this point, I estimate the city share for the project was supposed to be $230,000 according to the grant application. At this point, it's looking about $250,000. So including everything. And at this point, we're done with anything in the ground. So we shouldn't have any more overages. Really, the only remaining work is they've got to paint the runway and they've got to put seed and sod in. So we're just, as soon as the weather is good enough, we'll be done with that. And we'll be doing a final inspection and getting everything signed off on and completed for this project.
This 158,000 and there's more on top of that. I guess I might have missed that. City's portion supposed to have been 158.
The city portion for this pay.
Okay. So
It's
you got some more
5%.
coming.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, there'll be at least one more pay request from the contractor.
Any other questions?
I got a question. So when do you estimate we'll be landing on that new runway?
Well, like I say, it all depends on weather. We're down to paint has to be a certain temperature in order to be able to paint. I estimate in 3 or 4 weeks we'll be doing a final inspection and opening it back up.
Excellent.
Anyone else? Take a motion in a second to approve. Motion, Councilman Smith, second, Councilman Reed. Any further discussion? Corge, call the roll, please.
Councilman Smith,
Yes.
Reed,
Yes.
Pritchard,
Yes.
Stevens,
Yes.
Brown,
Yes.
Mayor.
Yes, and the motion carries. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
We're on to agenda item number 5, discussion and possible action on approval of certain costs related to the fire department, funds to be used from the city of McAllister's fire department portion of the quarter-cent sales excise tax for fire services. Chief Brewer.
Mayor, council, we're needing to upgrade the large intakes on our fire engines. We got 2 estimates, one from OK Fire in the amount of $8,316. We got one from Chief Fire and Safety in the amount of $7,360. We're asking council to approve the purchase with Chief Fire and Safety in the amount of $7,360.
What do these do, Chief?
I'm sorry.
What do these do?
On our fire engines is where the supply lines, like coming from the fire hydrants, hook up to it at. There's 2 of them on there. One's 2.5, and this one can go up to 6 inches. It's the bigger one.
So you'll be able to move water quicker, essentially.
Move a lot more water. Yeah.
Any other questions, comments? Take a motion in a second to approve. Motion, Councilman Smith, second, Vice Mayor Stevens. Corge, call the roll, please.
Councilman Smith,
Yes.
Stevens,
Yes.
Pritchard,
Yes.
Reed,
Yes.
Brown,
Yes.
Mayor.
Yes, and motion carries. Thank you, Chief.
Mayor, council, thank you.
Agenda item number 6, consideration and action to authorize the execution of the lease agreements with New Singular Wireless PCS LLC for the development of a cellular tower north of Mullins Park in lots 5 and 6, block 94, North McAlester, City of McAlester, including an access utility easement. Ms. Clifton.
Good evening. So we have included a copy of the memorandum of lease, option land lease agreement, and the subordination, non-disturbance, and internment agreement. These have been reviewed by our city attorney, Mr. Urban, and we have come to this agreement with the contracts that are included. The tower will be a 195-foot monopole, and the access utility easement is a 30-foot wide easement for ingress and egress and utility purposes, and it will be approximately 15 feet. The initial lease will be a 5-year term, and then it also offers the 4 successive automatic 5-year options to renew. And I've included those amounts in the agenda report for you. And if you have any questions.
No, go ahead. Assume these are all comparable rents.
Yes.
I mean, they're not getting a bargain. This is a standard.
Yes. This is, it's about $1,000 per month. When we did the cell tower lease south of town over by the fire station on South Street, and that would be the comparable amounts that lease was for also.
What about with other cities? Check that.
I have not.
We did when we did the, Councilman, if I could.
So is that 60,000, that's for the whole 5 years? 12,000
Yes.
a year? Is that it?
Yes.
1,000 a month?
Yes, it's 1,000 a month.
Let's go around the circle.
No, go ahead, Councilman.
Do we get anything else besides the rent off this agreement? It seems like when we did the AT&T tower, we got free space on the tower to use if we wanted to.
Councilman, that is correct. We have 20 feet on that AT&T tower. We do not have any space on this tower at all.
Is there a reason for that?
We did not ask for it
Why not?
because we
I
missed
mean, all
it.
you can do is tell us no. But
Absolutely.
I would think that, having tower space on the north side of town would be beneficial to us.
Sure.
So why not take advantage of that?
If you're
Especially
recommending,
when somebody else is putting up the antenna.
I agree with you 100%. Okay. I'm glad you brought it to our attention. And if you want to send this back, or if you want to approve it with the intention of getting some space on that tower, that's perfectly fine. And we'll contact them first thing in the
I'd
morning.
like to get that space.
Absolutely.
Vice Mayor Stevens.
Got some more things that kind of like you. What kind of fencing are they going to be putting up around this, Jamie? I'm assuming they're putting some fencing up.
Yes. Per our codes, they are required to put screening and landscaping around this area, and that has been discussed since the very beginning of this. And that is the intention of this, that it will be done when it is constructed.
Okay, so they're going to put up some. The reason I ask is because it is next to Mullins Park there, and going from there. So they are going to put up some kind of screening, shrubs, trees, something along those
Yes,
lines.
there will
Correct.
be a fence and the landscaping as well.
Okay. Next thing is on page 7, paragraph 16. It's page 134 in our packet. Why are we letting them sublet it or assign it to anyone without any kind of permission? And that might be a question for Pete and the city attorney.
I'm sorry. Would you state that question again?
In the packet,
Yes.
if you'll go to page 7 of the lease, paragraph 16, or just page 134 of our packet, I don't think it's a wise move on the city to let them sublet it or assign it without any of our permission or anything along those lines. I can't see that we would ever be okay with somebody subletting or assigning something without us getting at least a say-so in it or approval.
We are permitting an entire tower. Okay. What they put on that tower is subject to them.
No, I understand that. I'm not talking about, they can put whatever on the tower they want, but I'm saying I don't understand why we're allowing them to have basically to tell us that we don't have to approve if they sublet or assign that out. Because the way I understand the lease is if they sublet it, and let's say they decided they can sublet more space on that tower or sublet the tower to somebody else and then they step out, essentially what they're paying us, they could make more on top of that, which I'm fine with that.
There's that possibility.
But
Sure
I
there
also
is.
think that they should at least be able to ask our permission before they assign that to someone else that may or may not be as strong as AT&T. Does that make sense?
It does.
So I'm going to kind of go with Councilman Reed's here point that I think we ought to change that, as well as what he's asking for as well, to modify that to ask that there be some kind of permission process before we approve this lease.
if I could say something, my name is Ty. I'm with AT&T.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, I wanted to let you go. I didn't want to interrupt you.
I didn't know we had a problem.
Again, my name's Ty, and I'm representing AT&T here tonight. And to just kind of follow up, I want to follow up on your questions. I would say to answer your question, the language in the lease about no permission, that is industry standard.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason being is as the city manager had said, it's because really it's a privately owned, essentially AT&T doesn't want to give the privilege to a city or a municipality or even a landowner to say, hey, you're not allowed to make another dollar or whatever without us saying. I do understand your concern about us, hey, this is our property. I totally understand that. I will say that that's something that we could have the AT&T attorney look at. I'm not sure that they would take that out, to be honest with you. But
I can appreciate what you're saying there, Ty. I just I can't imagine anyone being okay with somebody just saying, well, you can sublet it or you can lease it to anybody else, and we'll just let you know who it is.
Sure. No, that's I understand. And
I just recently sold a piece of property that had a cell tower on it, and we had to go through that process, and there wasn't any agreement like that in that sell agreement. So it must not be whole industry standard. It must be specific.
I would argue the other way,
Okay.
Just for the simple fact of AT&T is the biggest, and we do hundreds of these per year, and I look at 30 of these a day as far as the lease language, and I can tell you that I have not seen any in my 5 years of doing just the lease work as far as getting it changed. Doesn't mean it can't, but to your point, it's definitely something that I can check into with the attorney, to at least maybe get a response back as far as why they wouldn't. I can absolutely do that. Absolutely. Mr. Reed, to your point about the space on the tower, again, I think that was, as the city manager had said, I think that was more of just there wasn't a communication of that there. I do know that AT&T has done some of those things in the past. Obviously,
I think it's pretty standard.
Yeah, and I think the only thing that would come into play there is looking at, for instance, if the city or the FirstNet, whereas the emergency responders or something was using that type, a lot of times what they want to know all that ahead of time because, for instance, this particular tower is going to be at 195. And I did not look at the drawing exactly to see exactly where AT&T's equipment is. But if the city were to say, hey, we need to be at 195 or we need to be at 180 to maximize, what we're trying to do with that free space, that could change everything as far as the engineering wise.
Well, I'm not suggesting that, we try to take space.
Sure.
You're the ones paying for this.
Right.
But I do think that, it's reasonable to ask for space on that tower.
Absolutely.
For our emergency
response.
Just
and also to follow up on that, and I'm sure you guys have read over this, but one of the driving factors for this project, and this is one of, again, I think there's almost 600 new towers that we're building on this just one project that just our company is doing. Is the FirstNet is the biggest push for all of this, which is emergency management. And, basically the federal government has come in and said, look, AT&T, Sprint, Verizon, whoever the companies are, we're going to tell you, hey, we're pushing for you guys to build towers. We want the communication. We want, smaller communities like this, to thrive. But what we also want is everyone to have the opportunity to get an ambulance as fast as they can, or police or fire or whatever. So what the industry has done is went and said, look, we're going to create this FirstNet program, and we're going to have a spectrum, which is just an imaginary line in the air of, what the FAA and FCC says, you operate on this line, which is the 700 spectrum. 700E is what they call it. And that is totally dedicated to the FirstNet responders and all that. So again, that is what this tower is about. Obviously, I'm not going to sit up here and tell you AT&T is not going to benefit from this tower. They're looking to help their customers in McAlester for sure. But to your point, the first responders and FirstNet is huge for this. So again, that's why we appreciate municipalities even looking at these. So what I can do, I can go back just to both you guys' questions, see if there is anything to your question about, as far as the approval on the subletting. I can probably get you an answer to that pretty quick. And then also to your point, I can send over a request saying, hey, where do we need to be exactly as far as our equipment? Where are we going to go on that route? And is there some available space?
I'd like to see the same amount of space that was made available to us on the other tower.
You said that was
On
that
the
20
south-
feet? Is
on
that
the south side?
There was 20 feet. And Chief, do you remember the height of that? That tower is a 100-foot tower. I know that. And I want to say it was between 60 and 80 feet or something like that.
Okay.
I'm not sure. I was thinking it's toward the upper portion of it.
Okay. Either way, we can
Okay.
work with that, and we can probably also do some research as far as just on our own to see the actual owner of the tower. Do we know who the owner of that tower is?
We have that lease
Okay,
agreement.
gotcha.
We can pull that in the morning. If you
Okay.
can give me
No,
your
that's
contact
perfect.
information,
Yeah,
we
that's
can
perfect.
get in touch with you.
Absolutely.
Councilman Pritchard.
Ms. Clifton. Ms. Clifton, did we have contact with the surrounding property owners about this tower?
We have not.
I mean, I don't know how they feel about it, and I'm generally not a NIMBY person, but this tower is literally going to be in their backyard.
I have been working with Mr. Troy Williams, who went and did the site selection, and we met several times and walked the property. And he did say that he spoke with that property owner right there, but we have not. The city has not had any contact with them.
There's actually, I believe, there's two houses I'm looking at Google that are, going to adjoin the tower. And I don't know how much representative democracy actually works, but this, I believe, is in 5th Ward. And that ward doesn't even have a representative on the council right now. I don't know. I'm not sure if the property owners are aware that this is going on, and I think they should be made aware before we build a big cell tower in their backyard, personally. What is the zoning of this land right now?
It's R1B. There are multiple towers throughout town. Whenever they are built, there's not any notice that goes out to surrounding property owners.
We can build a cell phone tower in R1B?
Yes.
Any other questions?
So you said that the rest of the towers, I'll go echo what Councilman Pritchard said. So nobody need to know anything, basically. People around there, nothing, no notice, they can build it because of the zoning?
Since I've been here with the city, I believe there's been at least 2, maybe 3, and there's not any notices that go out when those are constructed.
Do we get a lot of complaints on that?
Not that I'm aware
They
of,
may
no.
come to City Ranch, I don't know. Okay. Let me ask the gentleman back here. What's your name again, sir?
My name is Ty.
Ty.
Yes, sir.
Ty. Can you tell us a little bit how this works in other cities?
Yeah. To follow up with her point, the cell phone tower industry is heavily regulated, as you guys probably know, that, we must follow all city, state, zoning, federal, all the time. So, in this particular case, there is no, as she was saying, no notification. And again, we rely heavily on whatever the city zoning is. For instance, she said she had worked with Troy. Troy and I do a lot of the same things. And, one of our primary objectives when we go out into an area, for instance, this being the park, one of Troy's jobs and my jobs is before we even go out and visit with folks is to find out, can we even build a cell phone tower there? And in this particular case, according to McAlester zoning, there's no issue with that. So to answer your question, if we were in Dallas or if we were in Tulsa or wherever, we wouldn't try to go into an area if the zoning already says, look, you can't do that. So that's kind of the starting process of how we get to the location.
Thank you, Mayor.
Councilman Pritchard.
I'm curious about why the site was selected. Just across the street, there's a lot of farmland I'll call it. Why did you all choose this side instead of
Yeah,
maybe
from
something adjacent?
you know the, and I believe she can probably speak to this also. As far as the zoning, again, because of what the zoning is, you know, we get a location, we send it back to our RF engineers, and basically they do their calculations, if you will, and say, you know, hey, this spot is, you know, 25% better than 30 feet down the road, or, you know, specifically. So yeah, it has a lot to do with the RF engineering, how we pick our spots. And again, it all starts with the zoning. And just to follow up with that, I believe that Troy had also spoke with the city manager, and, you know, and the city was obviously interested in the income and, you know, moving forward with trying to get, you know, AT&T a little stronger in this area.
Thank you.
Another property, I think, is pretty close to outside city limits. Any other questions, comments?
Mayor, I make a motion, we table this and let them come back with an answer to the Vice Mayor Stevens' question, and also see if we can get language in the contract to give us that space on the tower.
Is there a second?
Yeah, that's the table for the next meeting.
I'm not sure how long it takes.
I would be okay with even postponing it until we can get those answered, so we don't have to rush it.
Well, it'd be up to them as to how quick they want to get them to us.
Yeah, no, you know, just to that point, I can assure you that AT&T is looking to move forward with this quickly. So as far as the answers, getting them to you, I can get those to you quickly. I would much prefer that we could get on that very next meeting. And again, obviously, if I don't have you the answers, I understand that, but there should be no problem that I can get you some answers quickly. So
Is that good for your motion table till the next meeting?
That's fine, man.
And good for your second? Any further discussion? Corey, would you call the roll, please?
Councilman Reed,
Yes.
Stevens,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Brown,
Yes.
Pritchard,
Yes.
Mayor.
Yes, the motion carries.
thank you so much, guys. Appreciate it.
To agenda item number 7, consider an act upon accepting the bid amount of $69,324 for from Sunrise Construction LLC and authorizing the mayor to sign a notice of award for the Indiana Avenue drainage improvements.
Well, council, Robert Vaughn got sick today, so you get me. This project is to take care of some drainage issues that was down in Indiana between 5th and 9th Street. We had 4 contractors that actually checked out plans and specs. We had three of them that elected to provide a bid. Sunrise Construction was the lowest bidder at $69,324. We have worked with them in the past. They've done some work for the city in the past. So our recommendation would be to award the project to the low bidder.
Any questions? Take a motion in a second. Motion, Councilman Smith. Second, Councilman Brown. Any further discussion? Corey, would you call the roll, please?
Councilman Smith,
Yes.
Brown,
Yes.
Pritchard,
Yes.
Stevens,
Yes.
Reed,
Yes.
Mayor.
Yes, and the motion carries.
Thank you.
Ms. Burke. On to agenda item number 8, consider an act upon an ordinance of the city of McAlester, Oklahoma, amending chapter 22, businesses of the McAlester City Code, creating Article 8, medical marijuana, establishing regulations for commercial marijuana establishments, establishing license and permit requirements, providing for location, providing for conditions of operations, establishing permitted marijuana facility to include medical marijuana dispensaries, commercial marijuana growing facilities, commercial marijuana processing facilities, amending chapter 48 fees, charges, and service rates, establishing necessity for fees and amounts of establishing necessity for permits, amounts, and process for permitted marijuana facilities, provided for repealer, codification, severability, and declaring an emergency. And that was a hard sentence to read. I'm going to turn this over to you, Mr. Reed.
Okay. Mayor, as promised, I put together an ordinance addressing medical marijuana, and I approached it from the point of view that I wanted to address it strictly from a commercial aspect. You may remember from a couple meetings ago that the original ordinance we looked at, one of the things that was in there dealt with individual permit holders. That's not in this ordinance. It's strictly for the commercial, dealing with dispensaries, growing facilities, and processing facilities. It follows the current guidelines published by the Oklahoma Medical Marijuana Authority. It identifies the types of zoning that each type of commercial marijuana would require. And one of the things that I was looking at, and I appreciate the help of the city staff, Jamie, in helping me with the coming up with the appropriate zoning. But one of the things that I wanted to do was try to identify zoning where a business could operate under one roof, but yet have more than one type of permit. And I understand there are some businesses like that. You know, you have a business that has a dispensary permit, they have a growing permit, and they have a processing permit. So what I was looking for was the ability to accommodate a business that holds more than one permit when it comes to zoning. And what we came up with is in the ordinance, you see where dispensaries, for example, can be placed in a commercial, health, medical, or industrial area, and also residential area after review, just like we did with the business there on Wyandotte here recently. A growing business can be placed in a commercial or industrial, and a processor can be placed in commercial and industrial. So what you have is the ability for a commercial marijuana business to hold all three permits and be established in a zoning of commercial or industrial, which I think is very fair. It's not very restrictive as far as where the business can go in, and I think it accommodates a business who is wanting to do more than one thing. Permit fees, I did the same thing with that. If you have one business is $750 for the first year with a $250 renewal. However, if you hold more than one type of permit, you would still be required to get the appropriate license for that second or third permit. However, you wouldn't have to pay a fee for that second or third permit as long as you maintain those licenses each year. Now, you don't have to actually put that business in, but if you have the permit and you want to get more than one license from the city, you don't have to pay but one fee as long as it's in the single location, and it only requires one inspection. And that's the purpose for the fee. The state guidelines requires that any business, either a dispensary, a growing operation, or a processor, has to comply with all city, state, county building codes, and that would require an inspection by the city. However, if the way I wrote the ordinance, if they maintain those licenses, if they pay the renewal, there is no additional inspection each year. It's only a one-time inspection. For the initial period between now and July 1st, the fee would be a flat $375 with the same provision. If you have more than one permit, you would only have to pay one fee, even though you would have to obtain more than one license. You'd have to have a license for each of the commercial operations that you are wanting to operate. Now, one of the things I know Mr. Urban pointed out was that at the time that I wrote this, the state was still looking at trying to finalize a state law that addresses medical marijuana. And I heard on the news yesterday that bill went to the governor to sign. I don't know if he signed it yet or not. And I don't know everything that's in that bill. The media is reporting that it primarily concerns the operation of the medical marijuana, inventory, testing, advertising, labeling, that type of thing. I can't say that the bill contradicts anything in this ordinance because I haven't seen it. There may be a concern that maybe we should table it and wait and see what the state law says. The problem I see though that we run into is that these businesses are being established. You know, I'm not sure how many we have in here in town right now, but we run the risk of a business going in that we may have to address later because we didn't pass the ordinance tonight. My personal feeling is that we should go ahead and address the ordinance tonight, and if something is contrary to the state law, assuming the governor signs it, that we come back and we modify this to make it compliant. But for the most part, it's written where it just follows state law now. And I don't know, like I said, whether there's going to be any changes to it or not, you know, after the governor signs it. Mr. Urban probably has an opinion on it, but
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
Well, if it's appropriate, I'd like to address this, Mayor. I did review Councilman Reed's version of the ordinance. We had drawn one. I compared the two of them. I've written city manager email to try to address this. I think the big problem we've got, I think, is the current state of the law, because it's unsettled. I talked to the OML General Counsel this afternoon, and if there was a bill passed that the governor is presented to the governor, it was I think she would be very surprised. What we did was if you recall at their last meeting, when we had that meeting, when we had our ordinance and Councilman Reed was going to redraw one. At that time, I told you that the state legislature had been trying to get back into session to address the situation. Since then, they have done that. They have passed what the General Counsel refers to as the Unity Bill, and that's this item. It's got 22 sections of new law that are not in the current law. The current law deals primarily with licensing and for different facets of the business. But it also has two amendatory provisions in it. But they are, you can tell that this thing is, you had the state question that passed last summer without any, apparently any input from anybody that had written any bills. And that was the purpose of this article that appeared in the local paper that I do have copies for everybody if they wish to read. But it is basically up to the state legislature to legislate what this law is going to be. She said you have the unity bill, which has been passed out of the House to the Senate with the title stricken, which means it's going to come back to the House for their further amendments.
If I may just briefly, according to the Oklahoma Today article by David Dishman, that bill passed out of the Senate and is set to be signed by the governor. I think it's maybe the one Councilman Reed was referring to.
Unless they didn't make any changes, but otherwise it has to go back to the House for consideration.
You know how the news is and how trustworthy they are.
The other thing
that's
she
what they
said
reported.
was there are 12 trailer bills. She said what they hoped to was they would pass this one bill that would go straight through the Senate to the governor for signature. But it didn't quite work out that way because apparently there were a lot of changes to be made, and which means it would have to go back to the House for further consideration. But there are 12 other bills that have been introduced by the state legislature now, in addition to this one unity bill. The OML filed, there are 3 cases pending right now. She said the one that is furthest along, and the bottom line to this is that all this law, all the terms of those bills that have been passed, the rules and regulations that have been enacted by the health department, state health department, are all going to be interpreted by a court, more than likely by the Supreme Court. There is a case out of Tulsa County, Broken Arrow, and all 3 of them deal with zoning, with land use. But she says that there's one out of Yukon and one out of Weatherford now. And there is a provision in the existing law that they passed last year that says no city or local municipality may unduly change or restrict zoning laws to prevent the opening of a retail marijuana establishment. And that's what these cases are primarily built on. But the only one that has reached the Supreme Court at this point is the one out of Broken Arrow. And there they, I think, I read that case, district court case, and it's my impression that the city of Broken Arrow was trying to restrict the location of these commercial marijuana outlets. And that's the local judge up there punched their ticket and said, you can't do that. So now they've appealed, and the OML has asked permission of the court to file a amicus brief, which is a friend of the court brief. And when I talked to Miss Nicely, who is their general counsel, she said she had not seen that an order like that, but they did not grant it. They did not refuse it. They said that whether they'd be permitted to file a brief would be decided at the decisional level, which means when they get ready to make a decision in that case, they will allow, more than likely, they will allow OML to file a brief. But OML represents something like 2,000 towns and cities in the state, and yet they haven't been able to speak. The holding in the Tulsa County case, they said the city didn't have the right to zone the location of that business. The one other case, and I can't remember, I think she said it was the Yukon case. The city won that case. In the Weatherford case, the city lost that case, but they haven't yet perfected their appeal to the Supreme Court. So you've got at least 3 cases there that are going to make a big impact on what the law actually is. This is a moving target. As of March 19th, and I asked her that today, she said yes, that the board of directors of the state health department are going to meet on March the 19th to see if they need to make changes or make changes in the rules and regulations. They're the agency that is charged by law to regulate this business. If those, and I don't recall the rule now, if it's either 30 or 60 days, if the legislature doesn't act on those rules and regulations that they enact, then they become law. So you've got the state law of the statutes, you've got the rules and regulations of the state health department. Now, we could, in fairness to Mr. Reed, I think he borrowed heavily from the rules and regulations and from the statute or the ordinance that we drew. But neither his ordinance nor my variation of the ordinance contains all the provisions that are in the present rules and regulations or the present statutes. Not to say what's coming down the pike, because we don't know what the state legislature is going to do or what they have done. One thing that is in the proposed law that apparently is in the process of passing is the effect, which right now marijuana is still a controlled substance. I assume it is still in Oklahoma, but it definitely is in the federal government, and it is against the law, under federal law, to be in possession of marijuana. Now, the current law says, what the law is, unless you're in danger of losing federal funding. Well, OU and OSU receive a lot of federal funding, and their position is they will not allow the use of medical marijuana on their property. Tulsa public schools just passed that law this past week, or that policy, that they will not allow medical marijuana on school property. McAlester public schools last night passed a policy that said they will allow. So you've got a mixed bag here of who is going to do what, and what the law actually is. I think and I've pointed this out to the city manager, but I think the point, rather than rushing to judgment here and trying to figure out what the law is going to be, which we do not know at this point, because most of it is going to be determined by a court, not by the legislature, not by the rules and regulations, not by ordinances, but what they say you meant by that term that you used. And I think that we should allow the city council to appoint an ad hoc committee. You can put on whatever time restraints that you wish to put on, but I think we ought to at least see what the legislature and the state health department are going to do before we try to enact an ordinance. I read the state question. I read the rules and regulations. I read the current statutes, and I can tell you that all that is subject to change at this point. And so I do not think we have we do not have a court decision at the present time. The most encouraging thing was that the Supreme Court didn't relegate this to a lower appellate court, the Broken Arrow case. They held on to it. So it is going to be the law of the land when they make a decision. When they'll make that, I don't know. The appeal was filed the end of October from Broken Arrow, but it could be 6 months or it could be a year. But I think we've got some time here to try to figure out what the law is and to do our best to try to come up. I think I've been impressed through this whole process with the effort that everybody has made to be sure that we do not discriminate against this industry. Although if you're my vintage, you've been taught all your life that marijuana is bad and it's the gateway to worse drugs and all this. Despite all that, I think the people of the state of Oklahoma have spoken. They say it's a legitimate, it has medicinal purposes, and that we should take advantage of those. The problem they did was they enacted this without any framework for implementing it. And so now we're trying to implement it. But I think we shouldn't be in a rush to try to guess what the law is going to be.
Mr. Irvin, so basically, I'm listening, trying to take all this in. So whatever we do, whatever any city does at this point, may be a moot point because state law is going to offset that anyway. So we may have to go back. I'm assuming now we may have to come back and make a lot of changes. Every town may have to. I mean, so because of that's just the way you said it's structured, and I don't know how well it was thought out of, but I mean they got that petition together and they got it going down the highway, and here we are.
Yeah. Well, and I think that there was a very good possibility that we could have had recreational marijuana if they had gathered enough signatures to have gotten it on the ballot, but they didn't. And that's, you know, but the history of these things are that states that have enacted medical marijuana very soon will enact recreational marijuana. But there are a lot of unforeseen consequences that I think need to be addressed. For one thing, it says in subchapter 6 of the rules and regulations of the state health department that you will enact reason or appropriate security measures. We use drum rights statute because I of all the ones I reviewed, and I reviewed probably 6 or 8 ordinances, that seemed to me to be the most complete. And there they had, you're talking about a business that deals primarily in cash and pot. Now, you would think that there would be some provision in the law to allow for security. This is going to be a nightmare for the police department to try to police these things. What better target for theft? This thing says in the without specifying what they mean by appropriate security, this thing says for limiting access and for theft, to prevent theft. There is nothing in Councilman Reed's ordinance concerning security.
Mr. Irvin, can I interrupt you here just a second?
Sure.
You're absolutely right. That was in your original ordinance, and I took that out because the rules had been modified. This is on the Oklahoma Medical Authority website. The original rules said what you just said. However, the modified rules took all that restrictive language out. And I think that goes exactly to what you're talking about, is that these cities are being sued because they place restrictions on these businesses that, in my opinion, are overreach. We don't require security and limited access and mold prevention and all those other things that was in this drum rights ordinance, and that's why it's not in this one. Is because I consider it overreach. There was nothing in the Oklahoma Medical Authority rules that required that, or even suggested that be a requirement. That changed. That all that restrictive language came out of there.
Well, but in this new statute that has been passed, they point out, and they're talking about license. They're talking about testing, and the article that appeared in the paper said if they're talking about 1 or 2 laboratories to test these items for food quality and or whatever else that they have to test for, it's going to be a problem, because there you're not going to have any kind of true testing for quality. So they address that in the new statute.
Mr. Irvin,
Banking.
if I may just ask a question. I understand what you're saying, and you started off by stating all this, but my question is it really a matter of we're dealing with the quality of testing or the actual selling or dispersing when the state's already addressed that? It seems like to me from the ordinance that I've read, and maybe I'm reading it wrong or I'm being naive to, but from what Councilman Reed has written, is really just a matter of placing it in a commercial zoning or industrial, which I think any business has to be in those. So I don't see that it's restrictive in that way. And we're certainly not dealing with the individual and persecuting them in the sense of their held medical beliefs. But it appears to me that this is really just allowing it to be in the city of McAlester. Because before we didn't really have anything. It's labeled as a pharmacy, and that's the way we directed it. But it seems like to me, this is really kind of a reflection of what the actual state law is. If I'm wrong in saying that, please state so, but it doesn't appear to me that this is more restrictive, and maybe I'm wrong.
But I think, can I interject something? I think where Mr. Urban is the basis of his argument is that state law is in flux, and for us to do anything at this point is premature, because we don't know what the rules are going to be that we're going to be operating under for us to start making rules now.
I understand it, but why was it a good idea to do the last ordinance, and then when we postponed it and Councilman Reed wrote this new one, why is it now a bad idea?
But it never was a good idea, in my opinion.
Well, I understand, but I'm just stating, but that's very much what we've already tried to do. So
But we haven't taken any action on any ordinance.
I understand.
So it's not
But
good
there was
or
a
bad.
pressure to get this going through. Then when it's rerun and done, now we should sit back and wait. And if that's what we choose to do, I'm actually really okay with that. I just feel like there's still an opportunity for us to always go back and change something, just like we can do with any ordinance at any time.
Yeah, but I just don't see the point in doing something that we very likely would have to change. And I do agree with 90% of your ordinance. I think, but I think that we're trying to set rules for something that we don't know what the actual rules that are going to govern us on it are.
Mayor, let me throw something else out there. While we're sitting on our hands doing nothing, these businesses are still coming in. Okay, city staff has no guidance on how to permit this, where they're supposed to go, where they're not supposed to go, what direction we need to take. Planning Commission has no guidance. Like I said, we're just going to sit on our hands and wait for the state to do something. Okay, but that's not stopping these businesses from coming in. And I say the old saying in the Navy, do something even if it's wrong. Okay, and I think that this ordinance, as written, is not restrictive. It may need to be changed based on what the governor signs. It's a simple review process. However, I do not believe that this ordinance is written to where it's going to restrict us and restrict these businesses. In fact, we bend over backwards in this ordinance to accommodate these businesses, to make it as easy as possible to do business with the city. The fees are reasonable or free, in the case of multiple permit holders. But at the same time, it gives the city staff guidance on how to address this new type of business. And doing nothing is not the answer.
But also doing something that we end up having to pay for, or that we could possibly end up having to pay for in the future is not necessarily the answer, because we already know there's a Supreme Court case on zoning.
I say the same thing by doing nothing.
Oh.
That you run the risk of having to address a problem that comes into play now that we could have done something about by passing an ordinance now to do it. like I said, we can always go back and modify it. My biggest concern would be, and I said this before, is we don't want to write an ordinance that's going to get us sued. I don't think this ordinance would get us sued. Of course, I mean, you can sue anybody for anything, but staff deserve, I mean, without guidance, I mean, they could throw up a dispensary, a processing, a growing operation, basically anywhere in the city. We can't stop.
Well, if
There's
it
nothing
violates
in writing.
present law, yes, we can.
The present law doesn't address this type of business.
Well, yes, it does, because if it's a public nuisance, it would violate present law.
I'm not going to call this a public nuisance. The people of Oklahoma says this is not a public nuisance.
Well, if it has health problems, such as mold or light or odor or whatever, it's violating our code for public nuisance. It's presence. There is nothing in the state law that licenses right now that gives us a right to regulate anything or to pass any tax or to license or anything. There's nothing in there for local communities except for that one section that says you won't change your zoning codes,
No, it said you won't place restricted zoning to keep this businesses out.
Okay.
We're not doing that here.
What I'm saying is that you are under present law, and that's what our protection is. We're allowed to collect 3.5% sales tax on sales. Well, it doesn't say anything in the, it says the limit on the state to collect sales tax is 7%. Says absolutely nothing for communities' ability to tax. So you're going to have to rely on the present law that allows the communities to tax up to 3.5% on the sale of goods, for us to be able to impose any tax on these sales. So it's if the court say, the present law on sales applies to communities, then fine, we're already covered. But in this new law that's passed by the legislature, they address things such as you don't want one of these processing plants in a residential area. Well, there's nothing in the ordinances that we're considering that addresses that problem at all, because they say it's not only a contaminant, but it can also explode, cause fires. Well, that's something that should be addressed by our first responders in drafting an ordinance. We should be able to limit that kind of stuff. It talks about banking. This is a cash business, and they in the new law that's being proposed by the House, they say the state of Oklahoma is not responsible for reimbursing a business for loss of revenue if they deposit in a federally chartered bank.
Mayor, can we move on?
Well,
I mean, we're not here to talk about what the state's doing or not. We're here to talk about this ordinance.
Well, the ordinance, I would suggest that you consider both ordinances then and put it on the.
I absolutely reject that run right ordinance. It's just full of nothing but government overreach. It has nothing to do with.
It has some protection for the business. It says that they'll operate in a secured area.
That's their decision to make. There's nothing in state requirements that requires them to do anything like that.
Well, it doesn't say anything about them being subject to our fire code or our building codes either.
Sure it does.
No, it doesn't. It's not in the statute.
It says it in the Oklahoma Medical Authority's rules.
Well, okay.
That's something, isn't it?
Well, until they change it on the 19th, they've already changed it twice.
Okay.
Ms. Clifton?
I just want to address, because, being staff and the number of questions that my department answers, The phone calls and the questions as to where these businesses can locate or how they, whatever permits they need to get, to do that, started before it even passed. On average, I would say probably I receive 5 to 6 phone calls a week. Now I'm starting to get phone calls from out of state, people looking at buying buildings sight unseen, and they're wanting to know, zoning, building permits, and so forth. And I have nothing to tell them. I have nothing, guiding staff, on what to tell these people. So I get majority of the calls and I make recommendations to them to stay within a commercial area, but we have no ordinance, no codes, no nothing to guide it. And I ask that you please, public nuisances are difficult to address, and also noise disturbances are difficult to address. And so to rely on that would be very difficult on staff. The building codes would apply to anybody building a structure, changing a structure. So those do apply. But when you start talking about some of the more specific things, they would not. So we do what we can, but I would ask this council to consider passing something to give us, something to tell, the public when they call and they ask questions. Thank you.
Councilor Pritchard, next.
I think that this council has already set a precedent, which I agree with, that the city zoning code already covers medical marijuana dispensaries. I made it clear before, I think this is a pharmacy. We approved the use for, I believe it's the Peak dispensary on the Wade Watts corridor after review. It must have fit within one of the listed uses in that section. But additionally, I'll say, I think this just really underlies a problem with our zoning code, our land use code, because we do things by uses, right? So this is a kind of a new use, you could say. It doesn't fit traditionally within one of the list, and so there creates confusion. So I think if we do anything, we should take a more comprehensive approach at how we decide what goes where in this city. Additionally, I'll say, and this is kind of a weird point for me to make, but there is nothing in the land development code that allows breweries to operate in the city of McAlester. I know when I was working on my project, staff looked for sort of the next comparable use to allow for my business to locate in the city of McAlester. And so I think staff has, either by the wording of the existing land use code or through practices, that they are already employing, have enough information to guide people where they can and cannot locate these businesses in this community. The last thing I'll say is, if we want to clarify this, I think we can just amend the land use code to say medical marijuana dispensary, processing facility, grow operation within the existing use that we want that located in. So if it's general commercial, light industrial, wherever we want it, I think that's the cleanest, easiest, quickest way to resolve this issue.
Councilor Smith?
I just think we need some of the details that are in this, and I don't really feel that the liability is huge. I think it's minimal, and I think that the city staff needs some, what are the fees? What are the details that are covered in this? So I make a motion that we approve this ordinance at Travis Road.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
You get the second, Cora?
Councilman Brown?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Any further discussion? I just have one additional thing. Like I said, I agree with 90% of the ordinance. I don't agree with charging a fee.
With what?
Charging a fee. Because we don't charge a fee to tobacco shops. We don't charge a fee to pharmacies. We don't charge a fee to.
Mayor, the reason for the fee is because of the inspection requirement. There is a cost to the city to permit these facilities based on the current rules. If it wasn't for the inspection fee, I would agree with you. That is absolutely the only reason it's there.
I just go with the state is going to be inspecting them anyway, so we would be redundant in our inspection because we use state building codes.
Well, they're not. Well, mean, like I said, the medical authority is the one who says that these facilities have to meet all the building codes of the local building codes. There's nothing in there that says the state's going to inspect the facility. They're inspecting the permit applicant. They're inspecting their record keeping, their testing, doing all that stuff. Things that we don't address here. You know, the ordinance is written strictly from the perspective of the city and what the city needs to do. And that's it. Everything else is like you said, the state is going to do that. There's no reason to even talk about it.
Mayor, I want to explain my position too as well. Just kind of listening here. Again, the state, whatever they've got going up there, like I said, it's like driving down the road. But I think either way, if we don't do something, and lawyers can sue you, they will sue you if you try to block them. I mean, that's pretty obvious. So I don't think the city can actually do much, but we can give Jamie, Miss Clifton, some kind of little box there to kind of protect the city. I mean, we can do our part, but I guarantee you we're probably going to have to come back and amend it, but it's neither here or there.
Anyone else? Corge Caldwell, please.
Councilman Smith,
Yes.
Brown,
Yes.
Stevens,
Yes.
Reed,
Yes.
Pritchard,
No.
Mayor.
No, the motion carries. We are on to agenda item number 9, submission and presentation of the 5-year capital improvement plan for fiscal year 2019, 2020, 2023, 2024. Well, city manager's just doing that. Thank you, Mr. Reed, for putting the work in on this and bringing it to us. I know it takes a lot of your own personal time.
Well, I'm sure we're going to have to tweak it, but I really don't think there's going to be a lot of change based upon what the meeting reports are.
We appreciate the direction.
Your PowerPoint, Pete?
I am.
I'm alliterative, apparently.
I can't PowerPoint.
45 minutes.
And then money that night.
Yeah, that's the one I need. Clear off my head. Look at it. Blank. Mayor, members of the council, I have the privilege tonight to present the 5-year capital improvement plan for the city of McAlester. First and foremost, I want to thank the staff. They have put in a tremendous amount of work trying to prioritize the needs of this city and putting projects together. I'm going to do something a little different tonight. In the past, we have really focused on equipment. We've focused on roofs. We've talked about some of the needs, really some of the tools that are necessary for our employees to make this city move forward. That equipment, those police cars, fire trucks, pickup trucks, dump trucks are nothing more than just tools for completion of projects. And so tonight I want to talk a little bit differently and really talk about projects that we're going to be looking at over the next 12 months. If you look at the 5-year capital improvement plan, it estimates a need of about $27 million. Based on designated funds that we have available to us on a yearly basis, we have a little over $3 million in infrastructure money, stormwater money, IT, different areas of the city that have been designated. So we have a good backbone for some of those capital needs. And then in addition to that, we always have additional funds left over through our budgeting process that allows us to put more money towards our capital and our capital projects. So what we handed out in front of you, there's a handout and it kind of goes by department, and those are the priority needs for the department. Those are not necessarily the priority needs for the city. if you look at these lists, they are tools, and they're tools to get projects done. So tonight, I'm going to take a few minutes and approach this from projects. So what I want to talk about is specific projects. That I hope works. Okay. So I want to talk first and foremost, and you've seen some of this in my monthly reports, but I want to get a little more specific with them. We're going to look at different stormwater projects. Tonight, you guys approved Indiana 5th Street to 9th Street. That was a $68,000 project. That is an 18-inch plastic pipe that is failing on Indiana and needs to be taken care of. Belmont and Preakness is a new drainage pipe. All of that drainage from Belmont converges on that corner, and from there it goes into an open dirt ditch, and we see a lot of degradation down there. So we want to put a pipe in and get that down to the creek so that we don't have that problem down in the corner going forward. West of Newton Circle, that is an inlet. And it's also got a problem with a slope and drainage that needs to be taken care of. It's been an ongoing problem for years. Everything on Newton Circle drains down into that corner. Mill in North Main, that is actually a drain structure. It is a large box underneath Business 69 that is failing. It has failed on one end. Even though that's in an ODOT right-of-way, we are required to maintain the stormwater in that area. So that's something that's in design right now. 102 Saunier Way is a bank stabilization. We are going to be extending the creek flow back there by putting in a concrete floor, extending that creek, that structure back there about 500 feet, putting in a concrete floor. We're going to be using large riprap on the sides and then using a substance that will bind all of that together. And then we'll be reestablishing those banks. We've had a lot of degradation. That's that area back behind walls back in there. We have Saunier Way, north side. That is a pipe replacement. It's a pretty big project that's coming up. 10th and McAlester, we've got a bank stabilization project. That on McAlester, it goes from concrete into earthen, and that earth is during high rains and high flows is causing a lot of damage to the banks, and we'll be going in there with concrete, some concrete walls and some large riprap with stabilization. Hunter Park, we have a beaver slide coming off that park that is collapsed. It just needs to be taken care of. And then on West Street, this is a project that we've struggled with for many, many years. This is a box replacement under West Street right by the penitentiary. And it is not large enough to handle the flow. We actually have a tremendous amount of water that backs up, and it backs up into people's yards. And we've got to get that through West Street and out across that prison property. So this kind of gives you some of the ideas of what we're working on our stormwater projects. Also want to bring up Washington Street, 5th Street to 6th Street. That is a street reconstruction project, and that's going to include a roundabout on the corner of 5th Street, which will be the subject of a lot of conversations. Street projects, overlays and base. Here again, these are a lot of the projects that we did not get to last year. And what I'd like to do is just kind of show you the areas that we're going to be working in. First and foremost, East Pierce Street, which is up here. That is from Strong west to the bridge. Van Buren, we're going to be working from 3rd to 6th Street. These are all overlays. Adams Street from Main to 1st. Adams is, I think, right there. We're going to be working on Choctaw from 5th to 6th with an overlay, which is this area right here. 3rd Street, Wyandotte to the railroad tracks overlay. So that's kind of in our first ward area. It's quite a bit of work that's going to be underway in that section of the town. We're going to be working on, this is 9th Street right here. This is Central Avenue. Central Avenue isn't very long, but at the end of Central Avenue is a church, and that's going to be a base reconstruction and an overlay. That street is failing on us, and it gets quite a bit of traffic a couple times during the week and definitely on Sundays. So we're going to be focusing on that. In our 6th ward, we're going to be focusing on Seminole, which is right here. And that is an overlay from 4th Street to 7th Street. Right below that is Wichita. We're going to be working on an overlay from 6th Street to 7th Street. Osage from 4th Street to 7th Street. These streets have all been identified as being problem areas in major need of overlays or reconstruction. Our last area is we're going to be working on Miami from Main to 2nd. That is a base and an overlay. And when we talk about base reconstruction and overlays, these are projects that will probably be engineered and sent out to contractors for bid. What we've learned over the years is a lot of times when we get into base reconstruction that we end up chasing that for blocks. And what it does is it ties up our crews for weeks on end. And we just can't do that because everything else is put on hold while we're trying to put that street back together. So the city crews will be mainly focusing on overlays. Any base work will go out to contractors. We've got Indiana from 5th Street to 9th Street, and Tyler from D Street to West Street, and then Washington from A Street to D Street. I think most of you are familiar with these projects. They were identified last year. We never got to them for one reason or another, and we want to continue on.
I'm curious, in the past on some of those overlays, they've overlaid it so much we barely have a curb now.
We do.
So when you go into if there are places like that on this list, do you try to take that stuff out so we have curbs again?
As much as we can. We bought what's called an asphalt zipper probably 7 or 8 years ago, and we do go in and pulverize that asphalt. And one of the benefits of being able to take off, if you've got 6 inches of asphalt, we need to take off 4 inches of it because it's been overlaid time and time again. The nice thing about that is that gives us a product that's 2 inches or less. And instead of having to buy additional base, we can use that product to help stabilize it base in other areas. So it's been a very useful piece of equipment for us. So to answer your question, yes, we're going to try and get back to being able to match the curb and gutter. Our utility projects that are coming up, we have a CDBG project for the Connolly Edition, and to just kind of give you a little bit of history on the Connolly Edition, it was built back around World War II. It's probably about 80 years old at this point. That sewer line that was in there is a hodgepodge of concrete pipe, of what all is in there? It's a mess. It's a little bit of everything. It's got clay tile pipe in it, and when we have a problem in there, which we have a lot of problems, we have a tough time trying to match that up and being able to connect it with with a good solid piece of pipe. So we're going to be going in there and working on that. That's our CDBG project, which is about $180,000. In addition to that, we are going to be working, we're putting together a private or a citywide project of another 2,000 feet of 8-inch pipe. To give you an idea, this is the Connolly Edition. Everything that's in red is the CDBG project. Everything that's in green will be the money that we use from infrastructure. And then we are going to put together a third project, which this is 11th Street. Right over here is Green Meadows, and we'll be tying the rest of all of the Connolly Edition in. When we're done 12 months from now, The Connolly addition, we hope we won't have to go back there for many, many years. One of the other reasons that it is extremely important that we do this area of the city is the infiltration from stormwater into the sewer pipes in this area is just tremendous. This pipe, we don't know how many cracks, breaks, holes are in it. All we know is that we end up taking on a tremendous amount of water from this area. So we'll be alleviating that problem, which in turns overpowers our sewer plant on the east side. So that's a project that I think is very exciting for this community, and to be able to put this together and not have to worry about that in the future, I think is a great step forward. Going back, we're going to be putting together a project called the Kiamichi Water Line. That is on Kiamichi Drive in front of the Tech Center. And this project goes from Wade Watts up to the entrance of the VOTEC. It's about 2,000 feet. I can tell you, since I've been here, we've probably been in that water line 5, maybe 6 times. And it continues to break down on that corner. We continue to replace the pipe, and it's a tremendous problem for our employees. So it's going to be a good project to get that completed and not have to go back into that area. We have the East Miami Sewer Project. That's the project where we're going to be rerouting the sewer line out to the street and getting it out of the private property that was behind the homes. We have the West Sewer Plant. We've talked about over the years our water plant and what we've been able to accomplish with that water plant. It has taken millions and millions and millions of dollars to get where we are today, and a very strong organization to operate that facility out there. It is now time for us to turn our direction to these sewer plants. We have spent very little money on them in the past, and now is the time to start doing some upgrades and start putting some things in place that will make these more efficient. A grit removal system is a system that takes out rags, rubber products, paper products, those type of things before they ever get to the plant. The importance of that is when this stuff goes through to the plant and gets into our pumps and those type of things, has a tremendous impact on it. A grit removal system is something that when DEQ comes out and looks at our plants, the first thing they ask us is, where are we at with our grit removal system or unit? This is not a cheap fix. This is about a $750,000 project in order to put this grit removal unit in place. We intend to get one moving forward over the 2019-2020 year, and then we will turn our attention towards the east sewer plant after that to put a grit removal unit out there. That'll help with extending the life of our plant and our equipment in the plant. The McAlester Lake Dam project, I'm pleased to announce that the pipe is showing up as of right now, and it's on site. We're getting those parts in, and I think Dalton plans to be moving out and starting to work on that project in the next 2 to 3 weeks. The Coal Creek Pump Station, which is extremely important, gives us redundancy in our water supply. I think I believe Melberger Brawley at this time is finalizing the electrical system on that, and we are actually scheduling cranes to come out and get ready to start pulling those pumps, send the pumps in, have them rebuilt, refurbished, and be able to put that pump station back together. So a lot of exciting projects coming up for the city, all infrastructure related. Community Services Department, these are kind of quality of life projects. Thunderbird Park playground equipment. Thunderbird Park is off of Pierce. There is a large housing apartment complex over there with a lot of young children. There's a lot of young children in that neighborhood. Thunderbird Park is adjacent to where we're going to be putting in the new trail system along the canal. And we're going to be adding some playground equipment, about $30,000 worth of playground equipment, including some shade, some benches, slides. We're actually going to put in a very short zip line that comes through these park systems. Connolly Park playground equipment. We're out looking at proposals right now for Connolly Park. That's about a $60,000 playground equipment that's going to be installed in Connolly Park. B. Jefferson Park. I don't think anybody's really talked about B. Jefferson. It's a older park. It has a wading pool that is not operational. It's got some amenities. It's got a couple of areas for practicing baseball, those type of things. Leadership McAlester. This year's Leadership McAlester group is adopting that park, and we will be partnering with them to make some improvements at that park. At this time, we do not have those identified, but they're working very hard to make that a better park. Something that's going in right now is at Chaddock Park is we have 2 new horseshoe pits for people that want to play horseshoes. So that's going to be, I think it's completed right now. When I saw it last weekend, it was almost completed. So just some exciting amenities that we're offering to the community going forward. Miscellaneous projects that are coming up that, of course, has the city highly involved in is the Choctaw Avenue streetscape from Main to 2nd Street. I believe that those plans are out for bid right now. We have Arvest Park, 2nd and Cherokee. We are reconstructing that alleyway where all of that is going to drain, and then we'll be pulling all of the concrete out of there, hopefully next week. That's coming together very quickly. We're looking at sidewalks from Strong Boulevard, on Strong Boulevard from Electric to Polk. It's interesting if you look on the side of the street on Strong Boulevard, how many kids are coming out of that Connolly addition and walking to either the high school, adults walking over to the medical facilities, those type of things. They have beaten quite a path along there, and if you drive Strong Boulevard in that area, there is not a lot of room. Bike lanes, those are being identified right now. There's going to be in miscellaneous locations across the city. When we figure out all of the dimensions of those, we'll be bringing those back to you and letting you know where we're going to be putting in those bike lanes. We have a Thunder basketball court that has been approved, and this is the basketball team, that organization that comes in and puts in a professional basketball court, and we've identified a spot in Chaddock Park for that. That'll be coming forward over the next 12 months. And then we're putting a walk-through archery range adjacent to the softball complex, and that is they have them all over. They got them in Eufaula, they've got them everywhere, and there are actual sites that you walk through the trees, and you have, I guess you'd call them kill zones. I don't know. 3D targets. 3D targets, kill zones.
That's what they sound like.
Yeah, so don't go wandering. So I mean, a lot of great things coming to the city. A lot of great projects. A lot of infrastructure projects. And I wanted to give you an idea of kind of where we're heading with our efforts in the upcoming year. So with that, I'll open it up to any questions that you may have. You have a tremendous amount of information in front of you.
Are the tennis courts being used a lot, Mr. Manager?
They are, especially in the summer programs. We have programs for, what do they call? They're called teaching programs, where people sign up, and we have instructors and that go for most of the summer. You know, on a personal basis, I see Mel Pretty out there still playing tennis. I see people utilizing those tennis courts.
I just wondered if we had to put any money into them lately.
If you look at your 5-year projections, I think in the next couple of years, we put some money aside to redo those courts, just to keep them up.
So we've got a lot of good stuff going on.
Mayor, can I ask a question? On the East Miami sewer system,
Mm-hmm.
I think we had it in there at $150,000. Is that just the project that we approved?
It
Those
is.
2 houses?
Yes.
I don't remember the estimate being that high.
There's 2 streets that are involved with that. And I'll, you know,
40 something.
have you worked on that project? at
No,
all,
that
or
is
was that
definitely
Robert?
not what we talked about.
Was it only like 40 something?
That's just a place setting number. I mean, until we get it out to bid, I can't tell you exactly what it is, but I can tell you that number would have been generated by our engineer.
I have a question too on the stormwater. We budget over the next 5 years. It varies, but no less than $600,000 every year. That says new stormwater. New is in parentheses. What is?
What are you looking at, Councilman?
I'm looking at this line item of the.
Oh, okay.
So I know we've done a lot of, from my time on the stormwater committee, we did a lot of, I don't know, I'll call repair of failed systems.
We have.
So is this money in addition to repair? I mean, is this just to build new stormwater systems?
It is, and if you remember, we're in the final phases of a stormwater master plan that is citywide. And one of the things that we're going to have to turn our attention to is some of those new structures that we so desperately need. I can tell you that plan is going to identify over $25 million worth of needs here in the city of McAlester. So when we talk about new, that's turning our attention towards being able to alleviate some of those problems with new structures.
Okay, I'm sorry, I just got a couple more.
No.
The lift station out at 150 Express Lane. Can you tell me more about that? It says there's a new business in it, I think, or something.
I mean, what are you looking at now?
Well, I'm looking at
You still looking at this?
It's on the line item, and then if you read further back in here under tab 2, I believe.
Okay. What do you know about Express, which is back there by the Choctaw Nation?
Our Express Council, our Express lift station it's kind of a put together lift station. It's in a shed. It's under power lines, and we only have one working pump in there actively right now. We have one we can pull from somewhere else if need be, but that station's fixing to get a pretty good size hit when the Choctaw Nation builds all the elderly housing behind it, and that's all going to come through that lift station. So we're here in the near future going to have more capacity coming directly to that station from all the expansion for the elderly Choctaw community coming behind it.
Will that new ammo facility also impact that?
Yes, 100%.
You see, manager, when you're talking at first of all the overlays that are going to happen.
Yes, sir.
What line item is that attached to?
It is Street Pavement Preservation Program. Which is, if you're looking at this.
Yeah, I found it.
About, okay, a little more than halfway down.
So by my calculations, we're going to spend on repairing or rebuilding existing streets, water systems, sewer and actual water systems. We're going to spend about $3 million over the lifetime of this plan. I don't know. This isn't a question as much as a statement. I would love to see a 5-year capital improvement plan that was more expansive than this. I mean, I think this is probably limited by what I'm speaking for you, but I think this is likely limited by what we feel is possible. But I know that as I drive around town, as I walk around town, that we've got a lot more than $3 million worth of repair work to do over the next 5 years. And I think it's important for this council and this community to begin to really face those numbers and say, what is it going to cost to make this city better? And are we willing to make those sacrifice, or are we willing to pay those prices? And if not, what's the alternative? So, that's just a sort of a general comment, but I'd really like to begin as a council and as a staff to think about what it's going to really cost to, just keep the city at its current level in terms of infrastructure costs. Thank you for your
Yeah,
answers.
that's about a $10 million a year job. Okay.
Yeah.
Easily.
Yeah, maybe more.
Okay. Because we work on these numbers constantly. And I applaud this council. 2 years ago, we didn't have $2 million for infrastructure. 4 years ago, we didn't have $1 million for stormwater. I mean, we have been able to make some strides moving forward, and we're actually being able to start making some of these repairs. But you're absolutely correct. Until this city realizes that this is a $5 to $10 million and probably a $10 million a year problem, we're going to continue to lose ground. Okay, so we're doing the best we can with what we have available to us, but we're going to have to come visit you over the next 12 months, and we're going to have to start putting numbers to our water rates, our sewer rates, all of this different rates that we're not covering the basics. Okay, there's a reason why we have some of the cheapest water rates in the state. But we're not covering that infrastructure that it takes to deliver that to your house. So we've got to make those changes, and we will be addressing those and bringing that information to you with some plans in the future.
Vice Mayor Stevens. You said that $10 million is probably. I guess my question.
That's my
is,
number.
No, I understand. Because we know there's a large number. What that number is might be a lot more than 10 million there. I don't know. Do you think it's feasibly possible that we could ever get there to actually just be able to maintain what we have?
I do. I think we can get there.
Okay.
I think it's going to take this council making some very, very difficult decisions for the future of this city. Okay. But until we can bring you those recommendations and those projects, you don't have anything other than me standing here telling you I need $10 million.
In my time on council, it's become more and more clear to me, going through this, looking at budgets, that we don't have the funds to maintain what we have. And I am curious, because me and you have had this discussion many times. How do you think we could ever get to that number to be able to just I'm not saying improve, but maintain?
We'll get there.
But
I'll tell you
in all seriousness, what is a concrete step? And this isn't I'm hanging this out there because I want to step in and say something different. I mean, legitimately, how would we? Because as far as I can tell, our budget.
We have to pay for it. You and I have to pay for it.
Yeah, I understand. Is there enough people in McAlester to pay for that? Because I don't think there is.
I think you'd be surprised at the numbers when you start looking at the number of households and the number of commercial businesses and being able to rely on them to do their part. I think we can get there.
So essentially, we just raise everything on everyone in the whole city?
At some point, we're going to have to. Absolutely. There are no grants out there. We get a $95,000 grant for CDBG, which we are extremely thankful for. And we match that 150 or 50 cents on the dollar. But when you start looking at programs, I mean, we're going to be working with OWRB on our plants and those type of things. And they have some money available to us. But a lot of this is going to have to come through raising rates and those types of things. Part of our problem, and I'll throw it out there, is when you look at sales tax as being our only generator, we're going to need some help from the state with property taxes and being able to access those. Because when they allowed the counties to go up to 2 pennies and access that sales tax, right now they're at 1.5 cents. They collect 1 cent for roads. Okay, 1 cent, and it can't be used on inside the city of McAlester, although we're all paying for it. Hey, that 1 cent inside the city of McAlester raises $4 million a year. That's a penny that we don't have access to. We're bumping up against 10%. Are we going to have to go to 11? Absolutely. Okay, and nobody wants to hear that. But we no longer have accessibility to that. The other half cent, we don't have accessibility to that anymore, and that's got us up to 9 7/8. The state, I think, the legislature is starting to listen and starting to understand that cities cannot survive on sales tax alone, but it's going to take all of us playing our part in order to keep educating them going forward.
Okay. So with all that being said, and a lot of, I think, pretty substantial hurdles to just get to $10 million a year just to maintain, is there ways as a community, and then this is me musing here more really to council more than anything else after going through this, and I've got a bunch of questions and I'll email you some of them and everything like that. But just like looking at the stormwater fees, like there's one in here where we've got, and this might just be a typo, but it's on the Sandy Creek channel for 2020-21. Remove existing walls, channel floors needed and replace with new. Portions of this canal have been damaged or repaired in the last 3 years. I know that many times on council we've had the emergency when we have big rains and everything in between, but we've got right-of-way easement land acquisition, $150,000. Maybe this is a typo. Are we going to buy more channels? Is that what we're projecting?
We may need to. I can't answer exactly what's going on with Sandy Creek at this point. I'll tell you what scares me about our concrete channels throughout the entire city.
Let me say this before you say that. I guess my point in stating that and asking that is, I think since I've been on council, and we've talked about this quite a few times, we've talked about it in here, we seem to be going in the same direction and doing the same things and expecting a different result. And that's not a matter of staff is doing things poorly or I think the council is really dropping the ball and screwing up. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that without creatively tackling these and really considering what is most important, and I think you've just stated that, and figuring how to do things maybe differently than what we've done, we have a real chance of improving our community in lots of different ways.
We do.
You know, I don't think since I've been on council we've ever talked about a way of doing something natural so far as a stormwater, of doing something that didn't require doing something along the lines of concrete and pulling stuff out and remediating trees and cutting things out. I mean, there's lots of different ways that can tackle some of that stuff. I'm watching this right now in Arvest Park, which is going to be a wonderful addition to our community. And, you know, we're going to dig up an alley and we're going to do that we really don't want anybody to drive down. And we're going to end up spending a lot of money on there that we might not spend on streets. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing. Don't get me wrong. I'm just saying, but I know since I've been on council, we've never talked about something in the sense of, maybe we ought to just do overlays on all of our alleys. Maybe we ought to just gravel our alleys. Yeah. And I mean, I'm not saying that in the sense of these are bad decisions. I'm saying in the sense that we've never thought about or discussed doing things differently. Yeah. And we look through here at the Expo Center, and I've said this before and had very heated discussions with lots of people about it, but we're going to spend $220,000 on something or more in your CIP that we have here that was presented this evening that we lose about $370 a year on. So we're going to be up to almost $600,000 in loss in 1920 if we continue down the pattern that we've done. And I think we just need to continue to tackle and look at things from a different perspective. I appreciate you putting this together and all the work that goes through it, because I really do enjoy it, and I've really gone through this a bunch, and I'll have some more questions later on, but I would continue to encourage city staff to not be afraid to bring things, even if it's going to be a little bit out there, because I think we need to have good points of discussion.
Okay.
Thank you.
Can I make a comment about our concrete channels that come through our city? You know, we had to think outside the box. To replace those walls is about $600 a foot. So you get a 100-foot section that falls, it's about $60,000, and it normally falls in 125-foot sections. You know, we had to think outside the box because we couldn't continue to have this problem with these walls falling. We were able to put beams in and boxes in. But that's not the answer. It's not the fix for forever and ever. The problem is those miles of canals that have concrete walls that are sitting on concrete and they're not tied to the bottom. Okay, we have miles of that. I want to make one other statement because what you said is very, very good. Councilman, what's your name? Pritchard.
He's a new guy.
Yeah, I just read it. At our last council meeting, when we were talking about the TIF, talked about $28 million worth of improvements in the TIF district. And then he equated that out citywide. If it was all equal, it was $900 million in order to fix everything in this city. And we kind of laughed at it. But you know what? It's true. It's true. Whether it's $24 million in the district and $800 million or $1 billion, these numbers are huge, and it's been neglected for a long time. We're replacing a sewer line in Connolly Addition that's over 80 years old. That is a hodgepodge. We've got stuff up in Northtown that's 100 years old. And you wouldn't believe some of the things we've seen up there. So, yeah, I mean, we're putting it together, but we're going to have to. That's where I'm heading over the next couple of years. Tony Irvin, you guys hired her as the assistant city manager. She is taking over the day-to-day operations and learning that very quickly. My plan is to move into the planning of the future for this city while I'm here. And that's what I hope to achieve, is to be able to put this organization on very firm soil with the funding necessary in place, or at least be able to identify that funding. So that's where I want to head. Okay.
Anyone else?
Can I say one other thing?
What if I said no?
I was supposed to put kids to bed 7 minutes ago. Okay. If you said no, you know, I can't brag on this staff enough. Okay. I think you guys see them on a weekly basis, a bi-weekly basis. There's a tremendous amount of work that goes into this, a tremendous amount of work that goes into our budgets, all of the product that we give you guys. And this is a very, very talented organization. And we are very fortunate to have the level of expertise that we've been able to put together with this team. And I think you recognize it. We all have ideas, we all have thoughts, we all have creativity. But this team is very stable in listening to this council and wanting to improve this city. So I applaud them every day. Thank you.
Thank you. We, on the agenda item prior to this on the marijuana, there was an emergency involved with that that we failed to vote on. So I would take a motion in a second to approve the emergency. Motion, Councilman Reed, second, Councilman Smith. Any further discussion?
I have one question. If we don't do an emergency on this, it doesn't fail, correct? The previous ordinance?
No, it passes. It just doesn't take effect until 30 days.
Okay.
Thank you. I'm correct on that, aren't I? Yeah. Any other questions, comments? Corey, would you call the roll, please?
Councilman Reed?
Yes.
Smith?
Yes.
Stevens?
No.
Brown?
Yes.
Richard?
No.
Mayor?
Yes, motion carries. All right, we are now on to new business. Any matter not known and which could not have been reasonably foreseen prior to the time of posting the agenda in accordance with section 311.9, title 25 Oklahoma State statutes. Do we have any new business?
We don't.
In that case, we would go to the city manager's report.
I'm not done. Okay. Update on the Carl Albert Federal Building, CID, criminal investigation that was located out the airport. It did start moving in yesterday. I think they're probably in place today. They'll be finalizing that move for CID this week. Next Monday, we will be moving in our police and our administrative staff for police. That administrative staff will be on the second floor. Our police department will be on the first floor adjacent to the stainless steel holding cells. The following Monday after that will be our courts department moving. And then later on that week, around the 28th of March, dispatch 911 will be making that transition over. It is our intention to be fully occupied in that building by the end of this month. So it is coming together rapidly. And once we get everybody situated and kind of settled down in April, we'll have multiple open houses for the public to come and see that facility and just see what we've done over there. So I have one other thing, Mayor, some really, really good news. DEQ has a program called an area-wide optimization program. They were here last week auditing our water plant. They have finished auditing about 500 facilities in the state of Oklahoma. And our water plant right now is in the top 3% of those 500 audits for quality, for investment, for disinfection, for everything possible. To give you an idea, we're in the top 15 out of 500 plants in the state of Oklahoma as of right now. There are some opportunities for some awards and recognition by DEQ, but they had a team in here of 4 people last week, and with Miss Irvin, Mr. Carlton, that whole staff from the from Severn Trent or Infomark was here and was able to provide all the information they needed and really congratulated us on that water plant. That's all I have.
Remarks and inquiries by Council Smith.
Congratulations to you and your team for the water plant and for putting together this capital budget.
Thank you.
Vice Mayor Stevens.
Pete, I had someone reach out to me about the dock on McAlester Lake Road,
Yeah.
or McAlester Lake today. Can you give us an update on where that's at?
I can. Atlantic Mico is going to be working on that for us, and they're going to be doing it for the city of McAlester.
Okay. Do we have any idea?
I do not have a date as of now, but it should be soon.
Okay.
I'll get back to you on that.
Okay.
They did originally have a date of the 19th. but
Yeah,
obviously
that's
they're
what
not
he
gonna
was
get-
calling me about, and I said, well, I'm not sure. I'll have to ask.
Let's get the same call.
Yeah, probably so, it sounds like. Other thing is, last time we discussed, you didn't have, I wasn't sure if we had heard or not yet. Have they closed on the land yet on 14th Street?
They have not.
Do we have any idea of what the holdup is there still? Is it still the same issue?
We do not have an update as of right now.
Is it the same issue, or is there anything else?
As far as I know, it's the same issues. I actually tried to call Mr. Collins. Kirk Ridenauer has been working with Danny, and I can't remember his last name, but he's Bert Collins' right-hand man. He's been to numerous of our meetings. I tried to call Mr. Collins yesterday to get an update, and I have not been able to reach him yet.
Okay.
I've spoken with the realtor, and they said they're going to close the 29th.
Okay.
Councilman Reed? Councilman Brown?
No, sir.
Councilman Pritchard?
Do we have a name yet for the Carl Albert building?
No,
I
we-
asked you last time.
The Carl Albert Administrative Complex. How
Are
does that
you
sound?
naming it right now?
How does that sound?
Fine.
I don't have a name
Yeah.
for it right now. We will get you one.
Well, I mean, I don't know.
No, it needs to be named. I agree.
It'd be good for the grand.
That would be a great thing for the newspaper to do a poll on.
Would be.
Why don't you work with Stephanie and you guys run with it? Thank you. Thank you. Way to go.
All right, mayor's comments, committee appointments, just, we got a little doom and gloom with the capital improvement discussion, but we're doing more this year than we did that last year. We'll do more next year than we do this year. We are making progress. We're so far behind. It's difficult to see, but just the fact that Conley Addition will have a whole new sewer system that won't have to be paid attention to for 20 years is an improvement. Getting streets base redone, those are improvements. we're not going to get everywhere we need to be in any time soon, but we are, we are making some progress. And with that, I would recess the council meeting and take a motion to convene as McAlester Airport Authority. Motion to include approval of minutes from February 26, 2019, regular meeting of McAlester Airport Authority. Confirm action taken on City Council Agenda Item B, 4, and 9, and to adjourn. Motion, Councilman Smith. Second, Councilman Brown. Any discussion? Corr, would you call the roll, please?
Councilman Smith,
Yes.
Brown,
Yes.
Pritchard,
Yes.
Stevens,
Yes.
Reed,
Yes.
Mayor.
Yes, and the motion carries. Now take a motion to convene as McAlester Public Works Authority. Motion to include approval of minutes from February 26, 2019, regular meeting of McAlester Public Works Authority. Confirm action taken on agenda item B, C, 7, and 9, and adjourn. Motion, Councilman Smith. Second, Councilman Brown. Any discussion? Corr, would you call the roll, please?
Councilman Smith,
Yes.
Brown,
Yes.
Stevens,
Yes.
Reed,
Yes.
Pritchard,
Yes.
Mayor.
Yes, and the motion carries. We'll now reconvene as the McAlester City Council. I take a motion to adjourn. Motion, Councilman Smith. Everybody wants to say second, Councilman Pritchard. Any discussion? Corr, would you call the roll, please?
Councilman Smith,
Yes.
Pritchard,
Yes.
Reed,
Yes.
Brown,
Yes.
Stevens,
Yes.
Mayor.
Yes, we're adjourned. Thank you, guys.
Was a long one.
Yeah.
A lot of good things went on though.
Oh, yeah.
Good things happen.
That's all.